sort of 500 to 900 million. And that might attract some bids from Mitsui or even Gina Rinehart's Hancock Energy. So the stock has bounced off a low of around $30 about 5 days ago, finishing at around 38.27. But look, it needed to do something because this stock was a $75, $80 stock 6 months ago. So it's been a tough one for Min Resource investors.
A big fall. And look, I want to finish on this. We read that domestic airfares have risen by about 12% since the collapse of Rex in July. Qantas has been turning things around, including its share price in recent months. But will one airline going under do anything to help the other?
Look, it's all about supply and demand, right? So Rex held about a 3% of the overall domestic market, okay? And with the removal of Rex and Bonza, the number of available seats, right, is sort of, you would think that the number of seats would have risen, but in fact, the number of seats has actually fallen. It's dropped by about 6.5% compared to before COVID. So supply, meaning that, yes, there's less supply, and demand, old economics would say you've got higher demand, less supply, prices are going to go higher. And that's exactly what's happening. So I think Vanessa Hudson's got a big job ahead of her to try and make sure that everybody is going to be looked after this Christmas holidays. But at the moment, it's not looking like the seats are going lower. It looks like the prices are going higher.
Yeah, delivering better service and better price. We will see. Good on you, Adam. We'll talk next time the market's up.
Done. Yeah.
Adam Dawes there, Senior Investment Advisor for Shaw and Partners, with our nightly market wrap.
A foreign exchange update thanks to Wise. Take your money international for less with Wise, the app for doing things in other currencies. T's and C's apply.
And checking the currency markets, the Aussie dollar has again benefited from the talk of US rate cuts, rising to 67.4 against the greenback. $1 will also get you 51.1 British pence, 60 euro cents, 94 Japanese yen, and just under $1.09 New Zealand. And our random currency of the night is the Guatemalan Quetzal. For all the Guatemalans out there, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but the Guatemalan Quetzal, $1 will get you $5.21 to spend in Guatemala, our currency of the day. Still to come, we're all trying to fend them off, with billions of dollars lost every year to scams. So I've got crucial info for you to avoid falling victim. That's next here on Money News with Deb Knight.
Before 12-year-old Charlotte took her own life, she confided in a friend that she was being bullied at school. Her friend's dad is Jason. She wrote to your daughter, "I'm sorry."
She did.
And your daughter wrote back, "Sorry for what?" There was no response. She then wrote, "Charlotte, you are scaring me." She then wrote, "Charlotte, answer. I want to know you're all right. Charlotte, please. I'm here for you."
Yeah, makes you wonder why no one else was there for her.
Ben Fordham live on 2GB.
Some health insurers like Australian Unity and Big Profit Bupa aren't properly funding private hospital treatments. And every local private hospital that closes puts more strain on public hospitals. Visit protectyourhospitals.com.au to help. Authorised by G. Horan, Healthscope Melbourne.
From dollars to dong, pounds to pesos, euros to yen, you can now take your money internationally for less with Wise. Wise is the app that lets you spend, send or move money overseas without all the hidden fees. In fact, Wise can be up to 4 times cheaper than the major banks are. Get 40 different currencies at your fingertips. Receive money from overseas, check exchange rates, pay bills or send money globally to your loved ones in the currency they need, where they need it. Join millions of Wise customers worldwide. Download the Wise app today. Wise, it's the app for doing things in other currencies. T's and C's apply. AFSL 513764.
At all.com, we welcome all the travellers in you. The solo traveller, the family vacationer, the weekend escape artist. Whatever kind of getaway you're planning, all.com gives you direct access to a course range of hotels, apartments and resorts throughout Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific, like Ibis, Mercure, The Seagull and Sofitel, at all the best prices guaranteed. All.com, for all the travellers in you.
What is it, dear?
The bills. Are we really paying that much for internet?
Well, let's switch to Flip.
Switch to Flip?
Yeah, Flip. Their NBN 25 megabits per second plan with unlimited data is just $39 a month for the first 6 months. No connection fees, no contracts, and a 14-day satisfaction guarantee.
Wow, what's the website?
Switch to Flip and save. Visit flipconnect.com.au. That's flipconnect.com.au. Offer ends September 30th. T's and C's apply.
Oh, the Blind Factory.
I've been asked to talk to you about plantation shutters. So, here we go. Plantation shutters. Marvellous things. I hear they do all sorts of things and they're quite what? All right, look, I've no idea what plantation shutters are, what they do, or why you'd call 13 Blinds to find out more. Oh yes, call 13 Blinds to find out more.
The Blind Factory.
I think I got away with that.
Hey, boss, we got a new bookkeeper?
We did.
Do they do expenses?
They do.
Cool. What about invoices?
Easy.
Are they in?
Yep.
There's no one else here.
Oh, sorry. It's NAB Bookkeeper, our new bookkeeping software.
Right. It lives in the computer.
Kinda. Technically, it's through internet banking.
Wrangle your business admin with NAB Bookkeeper, our new online bookkeeping platform. NAB. More than money. Terms, conditions, fees and charges apply. See nab.com.au for more information.
Money News on 2GB. Brought to you by Vanguard. Benefit from their nearly 50 years of global expertise. Invest strong and steady with Vanguard.
Aha, I knew someone would know the answer to this. Our random currency of the day, we always have one. The Guatemalan, I was calling it Quetzal because that's how it's spelled, Quetzal. Ev has texted in to let me know it is pronounced Quetzal, the Guatemalan Quetzal. So thank you for that. And keep your feedback coming, 131873. And look, just on the airlines, off the back of Adam Dawes' comments there, Qantas has actually hiked the fees it charges to change tickets by 20%, even as they're trying to win over angry travellers by making it easier to modify flights. So from the 9th of October, Qantas customers will have to pay $119. That's $99 is what it was before, so it's a fair hike, to change your name or your date of travel or cancel domestic economy and premium economy tickets. And you'll also then have to pay any difference in the airfare. And so much for Vanessa Hudson when she took on the role of Chief Executive, pledging to restore the balance for customers by addressing some of Qantas's unfair policies, including changing the name on a ticket. Now you've got to pay an extra 20% just for the pleasure of doing it. 19 to 8. Now, we talk a lot about scams and online crime here on Money News because it's costing us big time. More than $2.7 billion was lost to scams in Australia in the past year alone. A huge financial cost, not to mention the emotional toll that it takes on those who fall victim, preyed upon by what is the modern face of organised crime. Now, the federal government last week released planned new laws to crack down on scams, including new fines and new obligations on the banks, telcos and social media providers, but it also fell short of following the UK model where banks are actually forced to reimburse scam victims unless they're at fault. But the best events, of course, is avoiding getting scammed in the first place. And that's what we're taking a closer look at now, because on Money News, it's time to feel more confident about your relationship with money. Discover the brighter side to money with CommBank's personal finance expert, Jess Irvine. Start your financial fitness journey with CommBank today. And Jess will be joining me regularly to work through how you can make the most of your wealth. Jess, welcome back to Money News.
Hi, Dev. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. This is such a good discussion to have because it's an area of real alarm and growing alarm with scams and fraud happening, hitting households and businesses. Why are we seeing such an explosion in this activity?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it. I've been covering personal finance for about 2 decades now, and I'm sure you've been longer than that, have you?
Well, let's not go there, yeah.
And I remember, the piece of advice used to be, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, and we were sort of guiding people through that. But these days, sometimes it doesn't seem too good to be true. It can be very, very convincing, and we just don't know when to put on our guard.
Yes.
And so, it is the rise of those new technologies. We used to do a lot of our interactions face to face. It's a lot harder to put on a beard and disguise and pretend to be somebody else in real life. But online, we can fake websites, you can fake identities. People have their identities stolen, and then
with artificial intelligence, it ramps it up even further.
Amazing deep fake sort of voices, imagery. So, there's no shame anymore. If you do get caught by a scam, they're so convincing these days. I feel like there's a sense that we're all in this together because it can be difficult and there are steps you definitely need to follow.
And that's why talking about it, I think, is so important because, you know, when you learn about a new type of scam or, you know, the classic, my mum, I've lost my money at the supermarket, when you hear about those sort of scams, when you hear about the AI, the fake scams, it's arming yourself with information. That's what's so key, isn't it?
Yeah, and sharing the information. So at CommBank, we run these in-branch seminars, Stay Safe Online. And I went out to one of those in the Orange branch, and it was sort of a group of about 20 sort of older Australians, each had their own story to share, and sort of facilitating those conversations to say, yeah, that happened to me. Somebody booked a trip online. It wasn't actually a real website, did the money, you know, somebody else is involved in, you know, a romance scam, and that can be, you know, a real problem for, you know, we've got a loneliness epidemic, and then people will find whatever is the in that they can, you know, harness and get to you. So it's very clever.
Yeah, and it is a sense of the shame should be removed. I got scammed with the Taylor Swift tickets as well, a Facebook scam, and here I was, the face of the Anatomy of a Scam podcast, trying to alert people about it, and I got done as well. So it's just, it happens to the best of us.
And I'm so sorry that happened to you and your daughters, but good on you for sharing that story, because it shows that, yeah, even the experts among us can fall prey to
And I think that's the thing, you know, the more that we, you know, can talk about it and admit to our own failings, as it were, because there has been a real sense of shame attached to it, hasn't there?
I think so. You know, you've been duped. You've been, you know, preyed upon, and you've lost money, and it's a really emotional time for people. You know, some of the calls we get at the bank, people are devastated. So, yeah, there's definitely steps to take that we should tell people about too. You know, share the information, and then let's share the strategies as well.
So what do you recommend? What does the Commonwealth Bank recommend for customers for how they can scam-proof themselves, as it were?
Yeah, look, there's this great phrase we've come up with. Do you remember in the 80s, I think it was the 80s, the slip, slop, slap campaign? You know, slip on your sun cream,
slap on a sunscreen and slip on a hat?
Yes. So the phrase for scams to remember, if you're sitting there, you're about to part with your money with it to give to anyone, stop, check, reject. So there's often an element of, you know, urgency or, you know, pressing. The scammers will come up with a reason why you have to act really quickly.
If you don't do this, your Netflix account will be cancelled.
Exactly.
If you don't do this now, the tax office will put you in jail.
Your tax refund is at risk if you don't give us all this information, etc. So it's about stopping and assessing every time that you're going to hand over money to someone. Could this be a scam? And I don't want people to put on their tinfoil hats and be scared that everyone's out to get you. But I think if you're handing over money to someone, particularly someone you haven't transacted with before, stop, check. Google the person's name, check reviews. Have I been subject to this sort of scam before? You know, have other people experienced that? Run some checks. So if somebody calls you, you can hang up and you can ring them back on the official line and say, is that really you calling me? At CommBank, you can actually ask, if somebody rings you and says, I'm from CommBank, whatever it is, you say, okay, message me in my app through something called Caller Check. I want you to send me a message to prove that it's really an official CommBank staff member calling me. So there are various checks you can run through.
Which is such an important initiative, because we know that there are people who think that they're calling a legitimate number. They are calling a legitimate number, but the scammers can piggyback off those numbers too. So I'm so pleased that those systems have been put in place, because there's that lingering doubt that so many have in the back of their minds.
Yeah,
so it's
and
really
I'm
important.
terrible now. Like, I'll get phone calls from my utility company. It's a legitimate call, and I'll say, I don't believe you.
Yes.
How did you get this?
Well, it's a sad state of affairs that that's the way we have to operate though, right? Because we do.
Yeah, which causes a lot of hassle, because my utility company was trying to call me about something legitimately and I kept hanging up on them.
You were stop checking and rejecting.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Anyway, but reject is the thing. And I think we're polite. I think Australians are polite, and when somebody rings, or you don't want to be rude, you don't want to, we want to think the best of people, and rejecting by actually, hanging up, ending the conversation and saying, oh, I'm not having this conversation anymore, goodbye. Deleting the email, not feeling like you have to reply. Stop, check, reject is a little...
Which is wonderful to try to prevent falling victim, but if you do become the victim of a scam, what steps can you take with the bank in particular?
Call the bank. Yep, get in touch with us as soon as you can. There can be cases where banks can put a stop on the transaction that's gone if it hasn't gone through.
Because that's where time is of the essence, isn't there? We talk about, the sense of urgency that the scammers try to get you with, but if you think that you have fallen victim to a scammer, there is a real sense of urgency of getting onto you.
Insurance issued by AAI Limited, trading as Terry Shear. Read the PDS and consider whether it's right for you. Go to terryshear.com.au for a copy. The TMD is also available.
Whether you're planning for retirement, saving for a new home, or building your wealth, Vanguard can help grow your investments and your super. With nearly 50 years of global expertise, Vanguard's strong and steady approach to investing can help give you the confidence to reach your financial goals with low cost investment solutions. That's why at Vanguard, their focus is always on putting you first. So invest strong and steady with Vanguard. Vanguard Investments Australia Limited and Vanguard Super Proprietary Limited is the product issuer. Read the relevant PDS and TMD available at vanguard.com.au and consider if the product is right for you before deciding.
2GB Unpacked with Wise.
What's the best way to send money to my family overseas?
These days, it's relatively easy to send money overseas. However, you should do your research before pressing that send button. Your first port of call will be your bank. Safe, trustworthy, you use them all the time, right? But did you know it's likely to be one of the most expensive options? Instead, you could use a service like Wise, which was made to help you save when you send money in another currency. And it's used by millions around the world to do just that. What makes Wise different is that their prices are transparent and free from hidden fees fees, which are often buried in the exchange rate by other providers.
Take your money international for less with Wise. It's like SPF for your money, protecting you from hidden fees. And it could save you up to 4 times compared to major banks. Visit wise.com or download the Wise app today. T's and C's apply. AFSL 513764.
Keep listening for more 2GB Unpacked with Wise.
Velocity members save up to 40% off selected products at Snooze. Plus, you could be one of 50 people to win 50,000 Velocity points when you spend $999 or more. Hurry on now. Exclusions, T's and C's apply.
At Olsen's Farewells, we believe in celebrating every love story, every life.
When we lost Alex, we wanted a service that truly reflected his vibrant spirit and the love he brought into our lives.
Olsen's Farewells offers personalised, compassionate funeral services that honour the unique journeys of all individuals.
They helped us create a beautiful tribute and celebrated Alex's life in the most meaningful way.
Olsen's Farewells, modern, inclusive and here for you. Visit olsens.com.au.
You're listening to 2GB for preservative-free relief of dry eyes with no blurring. Swap your drops to the silky smooth feel of Nova Tears. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
Now, I know the falling price of oil recently on global markets should also see the price we pay at the Bowser come down. We live in hope. But the amount some motorists are forking out on road tolls is mind-boggling. Individual e-toll data has been released for the first time, and it shows dozens of account holders in New South Wales pay more than $30,000 every year in tolls. Dozens of them. Nearly 1,000 motorists are also paying $10,000 or more on tolls, not to mention the other costs that come with running a car like insurance and registration and fuel. And overall, New South Wales motorists are spending $2.5 billion in tolls every year for the pleasure of driving on a road. It is 5 to 8.
Before 12-year-old Charlotte took her own life, she confided in a friend that she was being bullied at school. Her friend's dad is Jason. She wrote to your daughter, "I'm sorry."
She did.
And your daughter wrote back, "Sorry for what?" There was no response. She then wrote, "Charlotte, you are scaring me." She then wrote, "Charlotte, answer. I want to know you're all right. Charlotte, please, I'm here for you."
Yeah, it makes you wonder why no one else was there for her.
Ben Fordham live on 2GB.
At SEW Eurodrive, we're a global leader, bringing decades of expertise in designing, developing and manufacturing cutting-edge drive technology to help keep industry constantly moving. Our industry-leading stock holdings are strategically positioned across Australia, ensuring quick access to a wide range of drive solutions backed by a team of experts who understand the unique challenges in your region. SEW Eurodrive, driving Australian industry since 1982.
Tune in to Healthy Living, Sunday evening from 7, or download the latest episodes on your favourite podcast platform. Healthy Living, thanks to Caruso's Natural Health. As Frank says,
if you make time for good health, you'll always have enough good health for a good time.
Need to send money overseas? With Wise, you can send money overseas without any hidden fees. From dollars to dong, pounds to pesos, euros to yen, you could save up to 4 times compared to major banks. Send money with Wise in more than 40 currencies without getting ripped off. Download the Wise app today. Wise, the app for doing things in other currencies. Terms and conditions apply.
A help company would offer anyone can drive it cover because we don't want a minor scrape to your car, putting a strain on a friendship or creating family drama. So that's what we're doing. Visit us in branch or search Anyone Can Drive It cover from NRMA Insurance, a help company. Excesses may apply. Refer to your certificate of insurance. Cover is subject to standard underwriting guidelines and policy terms. Always read the PDS and TMDs from NRMA Insurance at nrma.com.au.
Hi, it's Mark Levy. If you love a good feed and great value, you need to check out Pronto Sylvania, my new family restaurant that serves delicious Italian and Balkan meals for brekkie, lunch and dinner 7 days. Bring the kids along early in the week and you'll score 4 pizzas every Monday night for just $60. And every Tuesday night we serve up 4 pastas for $60. Now that's great value and of course conditions apply. So come on, dine in or take away today. At Pronto Sylvania, every bite is just right.
Save truckloads at Ram Trucks MY23 stock clearance with free rego, CTP, stamp duty and dealer delivery, plus 3 years or 36,000 kilometres servicing. Truck yeah. Visit ramtrucks.com.au. T&Cs and exclusions apply.
If this sound makes you anxious, be the next to visit NextSmile. Don't let dentures or gum deterioration stop you from biting into your barbecue delights. Put an end to problem dentures with fixed dental implants. Visit nextsmile.com.au to book a free 30-minute consult with our award-winning team and let us help you save your smile. NextSmile. Be the next.
Money news on 2GB, brought to you by Vanguard. Benefit from their nearly 50 years of global expertise. Invest strong and steady with Vanguard.
Coming up to the news, recapping the markets before we go. The ASX 200 up 0.3% or 21 points to a record high, 8,121 at the finish. Tomorrow we're going to do a finance quiz, and it is a simple multiple choice of key money news information. And it's a quiz that most Australians failed. So we'll find out how you might fare. And in our regular Let's Talk Business segment, we'll look at where some of the smaller players are looking to invest. I'm Deb Knight. Thanks so much for your company from my team. I'll catch you tomorrow here on Money News.
You're never alone with the 2GB app on your phone. Download now. Sydney's 2GB 873.
In this bulletin, making housing more affordable, 3 Queensland teenagers arrested and founding member of Jackson 5 dies. It's 8 o'clock. Good evening. I'm Chandra Llewellyn. The federal opposition says the government's next set of housing reforms will do little to boost home ownership. Labor has introduced its Help to Buy scheme into the Senate, despite opposition from the Greens and the Coalition. The proposal would see the government help first home buyers into the market by taking a financial stake in their property. But Shadow Finance Minister Jane Hume says it's the wrong approach.
These 2 bills that are before the Senate today aren't going to make a whit of difference to the number of people that own their own home. It isn't going to make housing more affordable. All that it will do is simply allow large corporates and indeed the government to own your home.
A large police presence remains at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida as they investigate a second suspected assassination attempt on the Republican presidential nominee. The alarm was raised while he played golf and Secret Service agents spotted a gun barrel poking out of the bushes. A 58-year-old man is in custody. 3 teenagers have been arrested on the Gold Coast, accused of going on a crime spree across the East Coast. Siobhan Fay reports.
Police were first alerted to the Victorian trio after an informant spotted the group sleeping in 2 allegedly stolen vehicles in Nerang. It's alleged the 2 boys and girl, aged 14 and 15, stole a BMW and Range Rover from Carindale and Merrimack on September 13. They're accused of making their way north in a succession of stolen vehicles throughout September. They were eventually taken into custody on September 14 and charged with numerous crimes, including bringing stolen good into Queensland. In Brisbane, Siobhan Fay, 9 News.
A 74-year-old driver has been charged and granted bail after a pedestrian was hit outside Sydney International Airport. A 76-year-old man was treated at the scene and taken to hospital in a serious but stable condition. Former TV star Andrew O'Keefe has been arrested for breaching his bail over the weekend. O'Keefe was transported by ambulance from a home in Vaucluse and treated in hospital after suffering a suspected drug overdose. Reporter Ruth Wynne Williams says he was taken into custody again.
The former TV star has been in and out of court over the past few months on domestic violence and drug charges. On each occasion, Pete, this man has been allowed to walk free. Right now, he's here at Waverley in holding cells.
Jackson 5 founding member Tito Jackson has died from a suspected heart attack. He was recently touring with brothers Marlon and Jackie and was due to go back out on the road next month. He was 70. New South Wales detectives are looking into a brawl which broke out after the Manly Bulldogs clash at Sydney Olympic Park. More than 150 people have been arrested following a a police blitz in North Queensland. And in finance, the All Ords has closed up 17 points at 83.41. One Australian dollar is buying 67.6 US cents.
Sport. Your stories, your call. 131873 2GB.
Queensland Origin coach Billy Slater is backing the decision not to play a semi-final at Shark Park. Cronulla wanted to play North Queensland on Friday night at their traditional home ground. Speaking on his podcast, Slater says it's the right call by the NRL to play the match at Allianz Stadium.
I totally understand the decision to take it to Allianz or a bigger stadium. What can Shark Park fit in? 13,000 at the moment.
12, 13, yeah.
So that's you need to give more people an opportunity to come and watch our semi-finals.
Swans coach John Longmire says he's still yet to decide who will replace injured captain Callum Mills in Friday night's AFL preliminary final against Port Adelaide. NFL champions Kansas City Chiefs have pipped the Cincinnati Bengals 26-25. It's 8:04. That's the latest news and sport.
At Sydney Adventist Hospital, we know that the best kind of healthcare takes into account every aspect of who you are, not just the physical, but the emotional, social and spiritual too. That's why, for almost 120 years, we've taken a progressive, multi-dimensional approach to healthcare. By adopting best-in-class technology, advanced models of care and innovative research, we've stayed at the pinnacle of our field and pioneered the delivery of whole-person healthcare. Sydney Adventist Hospital, taking care of you on every level.
The Volvo XC90 is now in run-out. And with a competitive finance offer, you can drive away in the luxurious 7-seat Volvo sooner than you think. Offer ends September 30th. Finance available to approved applicants of Volvo Car Financial Services for new MY24 XC90 only. Eligibility criteria apply. While stocks last, conditions of use apply. Volvo.
At Baptist Care, people are the heartbeat. Servicing the aged care industry for nearly 80 years, Baptist Care's key philosophy is prioritising clients' health and well-being. Baptist Care meets your needs with compassion and warmth through personalised retirement living, home care services and residential aged care homes across New South Wales and the ACT. Experience care as it should be, with people at the centre. Want to know more? Visit baptistcare.org.au.
This station endorses the Commercial Radio Code of Practice, which has been registered by the Australian Communications and Media Authority. Content on this station is regulated by the code. The code covers areas such as material not suitable for broadcast, news and current affairs, Australian music, live hosted entertainment, and the promotion of gambling during live sports. You can obtain a copy of the code by contacting this station or from the Commercial Radio Australia website, commercialradio.com.au.
Weather, opinions that matter, news you can trust. Sydney's 2GB.
Staying partly cloudy with a slight chance of a shower along the coast. Southwesterly winds up to 20 kilometres an hour. A sunny day tomorrow, 11 to 22 in the city, 4 to 24 in the west. Further ahead, sunny for the rest of the week. And right now in the city, it's 15 degrees. I'm Chandra Llewellyn. There'll be more news at 9 on your news leader, Sydney's 2GB.
And now on 2GB Sydney, 4BC Brisbane, and network stations across Australia. It's time for Nights with Bill Woods, filling in for John Stanley.
Yes, good evening. Hope you're well wherever you're listening to us. And John, of course, taking a little break just for this week. I'll be filling in till Wednesday, and then we'll have the two Murrays in on Thursday. Who knows what'll happen then? It's usually explosive in a nice way. Now, tonight, we'll be talking shortly with Amanda Kopp, 9 News federal political reporter, on the coming battle. Well, actually, it's been an ongoing battle, but I think it could reach a climax between the Greens and Labor, which provides all sorts of interesting and tantalising possibilities in the next 12 months. This is, of course, over Labor's housing policy, which has been frustratingly for them sitting in the Senate. Now, the coalition's not exactly enamoured with it either. That must be said. But this battle between the Greens and Labor might have a lot of interesting implications, which we'll delve into with Amanda. Early days yet, but there are reports around that Albo's getting pretty frustrated. What he might do, we'll have to wait and see. But there may be a coming to a head tomorrow. Warren Hogan will join us from the Judo Bank. He's their chief economist. Should we get used to high interest rates? That'll be in the second half hour of the program, approximately. Second half hour of the first hour. And it was really prompted, this discussion, by an article by Scott Pape, the barefoot investor, that I was reading today. And he quite bluntly said, and he actually related this to the removal of skin cancers when you go to your skin doctor. And he said it's very painful to have those things burnt off, or, the dry ice, whatever the treatment is they use. It feels like burning anyway, but it's pretty painful. It stings, but of course is for your long-term benefit. And he's kind of likening the interest rate situation to that. Interesting analogy. And what he's basically saying is we may have to get used to this pain and the fact, as Michelle Bullock indicates, the RBA governor, that a lot of people who have mortgages may actually have to sell. And that's a horrible thing to think about, because it could be our kids they're talking about there. But he's perhaps saying we need to get used to high interest rates and prepare ourselves both financially and mentally for them. Remember, back in the day, I certainly do. I paid 13%, I think, luckily because I was a first home buyer. But at that time, interest rates went up to 17%, maybe 18% in some places. So should we get used to higher interest rates? Why do we think we're entitled to low interest rates is the question Scott Pape asked today. We'll talk to Warren Hogan about that. What is the landscape now? Technology with Stephen Fennick in the second hour of the program. That'll occupy the entire hour. He has been overseas. He's refreshed and like a puppy with two tails. Having a lot of fun. I spoke to him yesterday, of course, filling in for Luke Grant. So he's got a lot of information for you, but we welcome your comments and questions as well. After 10 o'clock, we'll have John Stanley's Brain Game. We'll have the top 10 tinnies to give away. And on that point, we'll be giving away a couple of balls tonight. Yes, we are balls up here in the John Stanley Show. Rugby League or AFL, it'll be your choice. So we'll be giving those away to the
of expertise in designing, developing and manufacturing cutting-edge drive technology to help keep industry constantly moving. Our vast product range consists of high-efficiency electric motors, industrial gear units, motor controllers and more for diverse applications, all backed by industry-leading service and exceptional quality. SEW Eurodrive, driving Australian industry since 1982.
Now, if you don't think about your super much, it could be on autopilot, stuck in an average fund, headed for an average retirement, and who wants that? Colonial First State doesn't settle for average. With strong performance and low admin fees, more than 3 million Australians and counting have chosen Colonial First State for their super and investments, and an unaverage retirement. So switch your super off autopilot and switch onto the multi-award-winning Colonial First State. It's not your average super fund. Head to cfs.com.au. Past performance is no indicator of future performance. Issued by Advantius Investments Limited. Consider the PDS and TMD at cfs.com.au to see if it's right for you. Colonial First State.
Right now at Flower Power, there's something you have to see. Our beautiful African and Federation daisies and lavender Avon View are all the same. I kid you not, identical. They're all $10.99. Of course, you'll see how different their red, white, pink, yellow and lavender colours are when you stop staring at the price tags. Homegrown African and Federation daisies and lavender Avon View in 140mm pots, just $10.99 each. Available in-store and online. Flower Power, the garden people.
Some health insurers like Australian Unity and Big Profit Bupa aren't properly funding private hospital treatments, and every local private hospital that closes puts more strain on public hospitals. Visit protectyourhospitals.com.au to help. Authorised by GHOR and Healthscope Melbourne.
If you have sleep apnea and are struggling with the cost of CPAP treatment, speak to Sove CPAP Clinic, SOVE. They offer interest-free payment plans and flexibility to choose from leading brands like ResMed, Philips and Fisher Paykel. Only $1 upfront and between $25 to $54 fortnightly for 3 years. That's less than $4 a day. T's and C's apply. Stop throwing with Sove. Go to Sove CPAP Clinic today via the website sove.com.au or call the number 1300 7629 39. CPAP is used for obstructive sleep apnea treatment. Always follow directions for use. When considering whether CPAP is right for you, speak to your doctor. Payment plans are available for approved applicants only. Fees, terms, conditions, minimum amounts, exclusions do apply. Check out the website sove.com.au.
Catch Life and Technology with Charlie Brown every Saturday morning from 8, or download the latest Life and Technology episodes on your favourite podcast platform. Life and Technology, brought to you by Harvey Norman. Shop in-store or online today.
You're listening to Nights on 2GB, thanks to Oz Off-Road Penrith, four-wheel drive builds and camping store. Oz Off-Road, your ultimate adventure centre.
Yes, coming up to 16 past 8, and this week it's going to be pretty savage in the Senate as the Help to Buy and Build to Rent bills will face fierce debate. Now, according to some reports, this is going to bring the relationship between Labor and Greens to a rather crusty head. That'll be an interesting observation. I'll get to that a little bit further down the track, but let's talk now to Nine's federal political reporter, Amanda Kopp, about some of the nuts and bolts of this. Hello, Amanda.
Hello, Bill.
Now, before we get on, for those who came in late, the Help to Buy scheme and the Build to scheme are the basic parts of this package. There are a number of components to it. But first of all, if you want to refresh everyone's memories, Amanda, this Help to Buy scheme that will allow first home buyers to purchase a property under shared equity with the government, it's quite revolutionary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one there, and certainly something that I think probably a lot of people might be a little bit nervous about, you know, the idea of the government taking a share of your house. Now, of course, this is entered into voluntarily, and essentially the idea behind it is that, you know, if you don't have a big enough deposit to be able to get those kinds of loans for the places that you can actually get in our cities, which are, you know, obviously very expensive, the government has said, okay, well, look, we'll step in, take a shared equity within that home so that you can actually get your foot in the door and then go from there.
And the build-to-rent scheme, look, again, we can't go into too much detail here, but it offers developers basically tax incentives to build these apartment blocks or medium-density developments that are rent-only, which has raised a lot of questions because mostly developers are in the business to make a few dollars and they scratch their heads about keeping it affordable at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So essentially at the moment, most developers, when they build a whole bunch of apartment blocks, they're looking to sell them and make a pretty penny. But this one will give them more incentives, essentially tax concessions, so that they build properties that are solely for renting. So they're not going to be selling them for people to own them, but only for renting. And that's essentially because a huge number of Australians are renting these days. It's something like a third of all Australians, which is much, much higher than it has been in previous years. And so the government essentially looks at this and says, okay, well, there's a lot of people who are going to struggle to get into the housing market. So they need to be able to have more rental properties available to actually push those rents down.
And one of the interesting points of difference that I noticed when this was debated on TV last week between Michael Sukkar, the opposition spokesman, and Claire O'Neill, the housing minister, was the government's willingness, it seems, to give incentives to foreign investors when it comes to these developments. And Sukkar asked the question, why not restrict it to Australian investors? Surely there are plenty who are capable of building these developments without having to go overseas. I wonder how much of the debate will focus on that aspect of the policy as well.
Yeah, well, this is the main debate that the coalition has put forward against this bill. They essentially say that, these days, there are lots of mum and dad investors who might buy an apartment in sort of one of our big capital cities, rent it out to, a uni student or something like that. It's a bit of money in their bank as they sort of get older or potentially part of their retirement plan. And so what Michael Sukkar was saying, and certainly other people like Andrew Bragg, other members of the coalition, they say that, this is almost taking away those kinds of opportunities from other investors and making it more so that big foreign companies will be the ones who, are standing to benefit from these kinds of schemes, essentially because, it's not just sort of houses that are being built, they're sort of big apartment blocks, big developments to meet this kind of demand. And so the worry is that, people renting will be sort of funneling their money towards big foreign nationals rather than keeping that money here on Australian shores.
And there was an assumption with this argument, that is the for argument, that the larger corporatised owners of entire blocks, etc., would be better for renters in terms of maintaining services, etc. I'm not so sure about that. One of the big cultural things in the United States, and there's been TV shows and movies made about it, is the poor renter getting screwed by the person who owns the entire building, and everyone's living in squalor because they're so tight. So I don't know if being corporatised necessarily gives a better service as opposed to the mum or dad or family investor who just owns the one property and looks after it.
Yeah, I guess some of the thinking here is potentially that, bigger corporations can perhaps afford to have a slightly smaller profit margin, and so therefore, perhaps slightly more willing to invest in these sorts of things because, they might have sort of 5 or 10 sort of big apartment blocks as opposed to, 1 or 2 properties that you kind of mum and dad investors have. But that's true that, there are sort of some international examples that haven't necessarily worked out. But I think that this is actually one of the arguments from the government, is that Australia has relatively few of these sort of build-to-rent schemes, but places like the US, Canada, the UK have a lot more of these, and essentially what it delivers is more affordable housing for people who perhaps can't afford to actually buy a place themselves.
And it'll require a little bit of an adjustment in our cultural attitude towards renting too, because as you say, renting in other countries is considered a normal thing. People rent all their lives. Australia, of course, there's a lot of pressure on people who to buy a home. Even if you haven't really given it a lot of thought, there's societal pressure on people. Hey, don't you own your own home? That kind of attitude is prevalent. So we'll have to change our attitudes a little bit, I think, when it comes to this.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, right, is that in Australia, and this is some of the complaints that people who are sort of pro renting are putting forward, which is that the rights that we have for renters are not amazing in Australia. Most people who rent, myself concluded. You're usually on sort of a 12-month lease. That doesn't provide a lot of security if you are raising a family, for example, or, perhaps, you're kind of moving somewhere and you want to settle down, but you can't get that security. Whereas in places like Europe in particular, they've got sort of leases that go for 5 years, 10 years, so that, people can kind of have a happy family life or a happy retirement, knowing that they're locked into that place for a significant period of time.
Yeah, your kids can go to the same school, which is a big deal, obviously.
Exactly.
And I think everyone would agree with that. Now, let's get a bit of a sample of what's been said today before we move on, Amanda. This is firstly the Prime Minister and Housing Minister Claire O'Neil criticising the Greens and the opposition's stance on the scheme.
We are building. The Coalition and the Greens have been blocking. Australia does have a housing shortage. We need to build more homes more quickly in more parts of the country.
Now, what we've had so far is Peter Dutton trying to stop us from putting this bill into law and the Greens working to support him. We need that to end.
And here's Claire O'Neil again speaking about why the Build to Rent scheme gives Australians affordable and more housing options.
We want to assist Australians to have lots of different rental options. What the research shows, what the experts shows, is that the scheme in the Senate will build more homes. There is dispute about how many homes, but it will be tens of thousands of additional homes. Through all of this debate, our government will have a single focus: more homes, more affordable housing for more Australians, and that's our commitment to our citizens.
Now, I'll get on to the Greens in a minute, Amanda, but before we move on, here's Andrew Bragg, who spoke to our Clinton Maynard a little earlier on the 2GB Drive show. First of all, on Build to Rent.
But we are not in favour of policies which take away the Australian dream. So we're not in favour of government owning houses. We're not in favour of foreign fund managers owning build-to-rent houses. So there's no alternative for us, Clinton. We have to be opposed to these bills. And our job over the next few months before the election is to articulate a broader policy on housing, which we have under development now.
So, Amanda, there is definitely, I don't know if there's any give, certainly not from the Coalition at this stage. It all comes down to the Greens as the pivotal vote, doesn't it? And how does that measure up?
Well, I mean, you're right. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of give and take here. It's more certainly a bit of blocking. But, I mean, I think the frustrating thing for a lot of people, and, you sort of heard Andrew Bragg talk about the Australian dream there, saying that, they were opposing anything that sort of takes away the Australian dream. And I don't know whether this sounds a bit dramatic, but I mean, I think in some ways the Australian dream is sort of already fading in terms of, that the idea of owning your own place with a pool out the back and, enough space for the kids to be able to hit a cricket ball around, because, so many people, certainly that I know, is almost resigning themselves to the fact that they're going to be living in an apartment block for the rest of their lives because either they can't afford something, in our main capital cities.
Let's get down to the politics of it and the relationship between Labor and the Greens. Now, the Greens are holding out, allegedly, because they want, as a trade-off, the following extras: more spending on public housing, a national rent freeze to be arranged with the states, and the removal, and this is a big one because the Coalition has wavered just a little bit on this in the past, the removal of tax concessions on investment properties and capital gains. Now, particularly the infamous negative gearing. Now, there's a bit of movement in there because you can reduce the amount of negative gearing. You don't have to ban it altogether. Particularly mum and dad investors would be terrified of getting involved in property ownership for investment if they didn't have negative gearing as a means of hooking them into it. You'd really ideally want to be positively geared over time, though. And Greens leader Adam Bandt says the scheme would not help 99% of renters. So it's all or nothing at all with the Greens, as this song goes. Yeah, the famous Al Jarreau song. But are they going to make a rod for their own back long term here? There is an election coming up, not that far away.
Yeah, well, look, I think that this is a classic tactic in negotiations, which is that you ask for something that is very big, probably out of the question, and hope that you can kind of land somewhere in the middle. So my sense is that even though the Greens are calling for these sorts of things, is that they really just want the government to come to the table with something. So, maybe it's not totally scrapping negative gearing, but maybe it's putting a cap on that. Say perhaps cap it at, say, perhaps something reasonable, 10 houses or something like that. Beyond that, you're kind of moving outside those sort of mum and dad investors. That I think is probably where we might land at some point in the future. But I certainly think that after the old 2019 election, was it, that the Labor government is going to be pretty nervous about touching anything to do with negative gearing.
Well, and there is their relationship with the Greens, which, if it's a very tight vote, which it appears to be, a lot of people are suggesting it might be a hung parliament next time around. We're going to go back to the Julia Gillard days where she had to do deals to win government. So they have to tread carefully here. And Anthony Albanese's talking tough at the moment. I know they do that. And as you say, it's ambit claims. But I don't know. This is going to be very interesting to see how the relationship unfolds.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Labor is, you can almost sense them getting more and more frustrated with the Greens, particularly when it comes to housing policy. And really, I think that comes down to the fact that the Greens essentially jumped on this whole idea around renters' rights and the fact that so many more Australians are renting these days faster than Labor did. And they've really been the ones who have driven the agenda here, the Greens, that is, rather than the government. And so you essentially have Labor feeling probably pretty nervous that, they've got this smaller party essentially calling the shots when it comes to a large portion of the population who are renting.
Interesting times ahead. And Amanda, you'll be all over it for the Nine Network. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
There it is, Amanda Kopp, 9 News federal political reporter. It's 8:29. Your thoughts on this? I've already had, look, I'm going to have to just deal with the bulldog in the room. We've had a few texts already from people talking about yesterday's game. I will briefly address that, but of course I think housing is a little more important than footy. But I will briefly address that in the next half hour. So for those who texted in, stop it out there. We've got people out in the next room just dancing all over my grave here. We'll be right back.
Afternoons with Michael McLaren.
The executive producer here, Jacob, is an extraordinary mimic. I need you to say, I love Tim Tams more than a Scotch finger. Let's have it in South African. I love Tim Tams. No. No. Glasgow, I think. Number 2 on the list is Scotland, funnily enough.
I love Tim Tams more than a Scotch finger.
Let's go to Germany.
Yeah, I love... No.
The American Deep South.
I love Tim Tams more than I love a Scotch finger.
That wasn't bad.
Michael McLaren. Weekdays from midday on 2GB.
Tune in to Healthy Living, Sunday evening from 7, or download the latest episodes on your favourite podcast platform. Healthy Living, thanks to Caruso's Natural Health. As Frank says,
if you make time for good health, you'll always have enough good health for a good time.
At Sydney Adventist Hospital, we know that the best kind of healthcare takes into account every aspect of who you are, not just the physical, but the emotional, social and spiritual too. That's why, for almost 120 years, we've taken a progressive, multi-dimensional approach to healthcare. By adopting best-in-class technology, advanced models of care and innovative research, we've stayed at the pinnacle of our field and pioneered the delivery of whole-person healthcare. Sydney Adventist Hospital, taking care of you on every level.
Winning season news update.
The Monopoly game at Backers is here with a 1 in 4 chance to win prizes like a Bosch Ultimate Toolkit, Smeg coffee machines and stand mixers from appliances online. Download the MyBackers app and play today.
It's October 22. For full terms, visit mcdonalds.com.au.
Have you been charged with a criminal offence? Need legal representation or advice? Bryden's lawyers have experts in criminal law available to assist. No matter the complexity of your case, whether it be assault, drink driving or a drug offence, our experienced criminal lawyers possess the expertise to ensure that your rights are protected with the strongest possible defence. Call Bryden's lawyers 24-hour criminal law hotline on 1800 017 017 or visit brydens.com.au.
Local private hospitals play a critical role for us all. Without them, public hospitals wouldn't cope and we'd all be waiting longer for treatment. Sadly, some health insurers like Australian Unity and Big Profit Bupa aren't properly funding treatments. And some local private hospitals may be forced to close. Services like maternity, mental health and rehab may be shut down. Visit protectyourhospitals.com.au to help. Authorised by G. Horan Healthscope, Melbourne.
I miss Gran's cooking, especially her veggies. She grew her own and they tasted amazing. But I always thought homegrown was too much trouble until I visited Flower Power. They showed me how easy and how cheap it is. Right now, Flower Power's single herb and veggie seedlings are $1. Imagine fresh cucumbers, chilies, lettuce or tomatoes for just $1 each. Now our herbs and veggies are as delicious as Grands. Buy in-store or online at Flower Power, the garden people.
Nights on 2GB. Order your shutters now for installation before Christmas. Don't miss out. Call the Blind Factory on 13 Blinds for the best price and lifetime guarantee.
When that Clinton campaign advisor said it's the economy, stupid, I was listening because I know he was talking to me. That's why we're going to get on to interest rates in just a tick. Coming up to 27 to 9. On the text line, who dictates how much the rent is in the build-to-rent scheme? If they jack up the rent like investors do now, what's the point? That's from Gavin from Penrith. And this from Julie. I'm pretty sure I remember two very similar housing schemes in Canberra in the late 70s, early 80s. I lived in Canberra for 3 years in the early 80s, Julie. Went to university there, and I'm pretty sure you're right, but I can't remember the details. But thank you for drawing that to our attention. Has it been tried before? Possibly in the Territory. But look, it's been 2 years and 4 months since the RBA lifted the cash rate to help fight inflation. And for a lot of people, it probably feels like a long time because they've been grappling with their bills ever since. And of course, it's not just the mortgage, it's everything at the moment. Mortgage holders have been counting down the days until, as many people have promised, or at least forecast, rates will come down again. But why? Why should they? Asks some people. With inflation staying stubbornly high, there's a lot of discussion around about just dealing with it. Just deal with it. Now, the other thing happening this week is the US Federal Reserve will meet, and there's a lot of talk they will be cutting rates. So, what should we do? What should we expect? Are we getting a little spoilt by the very, very low rates we had during the pandemic? Is the new norm this expectation of very low rates when there's no real reason why we shouldn't just be dealing with higher rates and rate rises as we used to do back when they were 17, 18%? Warren Hogan is the Chief Economic Advisor at Judo Bank and joins us now. G'day, Warren.
Good evening.
Do you reckon there's any merit in getting used to high rates, or should we always strive for lower rates?
Well, no, I don't think striving for lower rates is a good idea if it's not appropriate. I mean, the interest rate level needs to be set to what's happening in the economy. We had extraordinarily low rates in the pandemic, which really was artificially low. And you could argue we had low rates for the decade leading up to it, post the GFC. I believe we're in a long-term turning point. That is, we're not going back to where we were, and if anything, rates are going to sort of drift higher over the next decade or so. And to your point, yes, this is the new normal. And although we may see some rate cuts at some stage, we may also see some rate hikes. And the average level of the RBA rate or the average level of mortgage rates is not going to be too dissimilar to what we're seeing now over the next 3-5 years, I would have thought.
I think, to be fair to people like Scott Pape, the Barefoot investor, who wrote about this today in the newspaper, rather than just being doomsayers, they're trying to prepare us when we organise our finances for the future. That is, you need to factor in rate rises again. It needs to be part of your life when you're managing your finances. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. And that's what I've been saying to all of my clients for the last few years, is that we're not going back to where we were. Indeed, we experienced 40 years of rates generally declining, as you mentioned before, from the high point of 17.5% in the late 80s. They sort of drifted down with a few wiggles and waggles. And we may well be heading in the other direction. Now, I don't think we'll go back to anywhere near 17%, but with the amount of debt out there, and particularly the household sector, an interest rate up around 6 or 7% would probably have a very similar impact on the economy as 17% did in the late 80s. And of course, we don't want to go anywhere near that. But I wouldn't be expecting a lot of rate cuts, and I certainly wouldn't be expecting them anytime soon.
I wouldn't call it a war of words. You could maybe call it a game of tennis of words between Jim Chalmers and Michelle Bullock in terms of talking about the economy. Warren, what do you make of that? Is the Treasurer, of course, being a politician, having to be overcautious with what he says, whereas Michelle Bullock is trying to educate us a little bit?
Well, Michelle Bullock, who I've observed for most of my 30-year career, is saying it as she sees it. And as the RBA's best economists are working away every day on this, just as I do. And she's telling us what's going on in our economy, and that is a very complex situation we're not used to. We've got an economy that's very different from anything we've known for 50 years, and that is we have structural labour shortages, whereas for the last 50 years we've had an excess of labour where unemployment's been a major problem.
Yeah.
And that's all changed, and that means the way you characterise and think about the economy has to change too. Michelle Bullock and other senior RBA people and some of us economists are trying to get the message across that even though GDP growth is only 1%, which is very weak by our standards, it actually is an economy that can't actually grow any more than that because we're operating at our capacity. And of course, if you try and put more money into the economy, whether that be through government spending or through job creation, it's actually going to be inflationary, which is the point that Michelle Bullock's trying to make, but of course, which the government is not making. They're emphasising the softness in the economy, in the consumer side, and obviously trying to ensure that we don't get any rate hikes and maybe even some rate cuts before the election.
Well, I was just about to ask that. And the difficulty here, of course, is with these questions, and people need to listen carefully, is there's what you think should happen and there's what you think will happen because we don't all have our hands on the levers. So is it safe to rule out a rate cut before the end of the year? In other words, I'm asking you, what do you think will happen, Warren?
Yeah, well, I think it is safe to say that when the governor of the Reserve Bank says they are not even contemplating and wouldn't really consider a rate cut anytime soon, I think you take them very seriously. And this
unlike a politician who can obviously go backwards if they need to.
Well, exactly right. And who would you listen to talking about something complex and difficult? Would it be a politician versus an independent bureaucrat with a long track record of doing the right thing? So, look, we shouldn't be expecting a rate cut. Of course, anything could happen. We could have another pandemic, a war could start. Anything could happen. But the way the economy is playing out, and this is my view, is that we're more likely to get a rate hike than a rate cut in the next 6 to 9 months. And indeed, my assessment is, and I've been watching this for 30 years, any other Reserve Bank board in the last 30 years would already have our cash rate above 5%. So we're trying something different. We're out of whack with the rest of the world, which will be emphasised this week as the Federal Reserve starts cutting rates. And their rate is at 5.5%. They can do 4 25 basis point rate cuts and still have their interest rate above ours.
Right.
And this is how we're out of whack with the rest of the world. And I'm not confident that the experiment's going to work because we've still got inflation here. And that's what's hurting Australians. It's not rate hikes. That's hurting some Australians. What is hurting Australians is inflation and the bracket creep and the higher tax burden that comes with it. And until we address that problem, everything else is secondary. We can't deal and think about dealing with the housing shortages. We can't think about dealing with broader structural issues around investment and capacity in the economy. We've got to deal with this inflation. And quite frankly, I think we aren't doing a good enough job at it.
Warren Hogan, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show.
There he is, Warren Hogan, Chief Economic Advisor at Judo Bank. What are your thoughts? How are you doing? I suppose the other thing too is there are people who have significant savings and they're not disliking the rates going up a little bit. They would like to see 5-6% on some of their returns, particularly self-funded retirees with short-term investment plans. It's 19 to 9. We'll be right back with more of your feedback, and we're going to have a listen to Peter Dutton, who's finally on TikTok. Love to know your thoughts on that too.
Country's always been cool in Tamworth. Since 1973, it's been the heart and soul of Australian country music. From the legends of yesterday to the stars of today, Tamworth's music legacy lives on. Experience country and leave with memories that last a lifetime. Join us in Tamworth this January to be part of that story. Country's always been cool in Tamworth, so start making memories and visit tcmf.com.au.
Launch your punting plan with the Ladbrokes app. Loaded with the best racing features, including Bet Ticker, Yard Comment, and Black Book. chances are you're about to lose.
Load up with huge Ram trucking savings at Ram's MY23 stock clearance. Get free Rego and CTP, Truck Year. Free stamp duty and dealer delivery, Truck Year. Plus free 3 years or 36,000 kilometre servicing, Truck Year. So get behind the wheel of a Hemi V8 or Cummins turbo diesel powered Ram and drive away with truckloads of savings today. Visit ramtrucks.com.au. Truck Year. MY23 new stock vehicles only. T&Cs and exclusions apply.
Local private hospitals play a critical role for us all. Without them, public hospitals wouldn't cope and we'd all be waiting longer for treatment. Sadly, some health insurers like Australian Unity and Big Profit Bupa aren't properly funding treatments. And some local private hospitals may be forced to close. Services like maternity, mental health and rehab may be shut down. Visit protectyourhospitals.com.au to help. Authorised by G. Hoare and Healthscope, Melbourne.
At Baptist Care, people are the heartbeat. Servicing the aged care industry for nearly 80 years, Baptist Care's key philosophy is prioritising clients' health and well-being. Baptist Care meets your needs with compassion and warmth through personalised retirement living, home care services and residential aged care homes across New South Wales and the ACT. Experience care as it should be, with people at the centre. Want to know more? Visit baptistcare.org.au.
Virgin Australia's Queensland sale is now on. Fly for just $59 from Sydney to the Sunshine Coast on select one-way economy light flights. Holiday glow included. Hurry, sale ends this Sunday unless sold out prior. Book now at virginaustralia.com. Seat selection and checked baggage not included in economy light fare. Payment surcharge may apply, subject to availability, travel periods and T&Cs apply.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's thrilling musical Sunset Boulevard is now playing at the Sydney Opera House. Witness how the intoxicating need for fame and glamour turns deadly in this lavish musical blockbuster. Book now.
Nights for deep heat, fast, targeted pain relief from an iconic brand you know and trust. Deep Heat. Feel it work.
Yes, and in case you missed the report that came through, I think during the Wide World of Sports program, the Bulldogs' Josh Addo-Carr has been summoned now to front the NRL Integrity Unit. He missed the Bulldogs' defeat against Manly yesterday after initially failing a roadside test for cocaine and then an oral sample that was taken at the scene, and that test came through also positive a couple of days later. There was a lot of confusion, as you probably are aware, around the initial reports on this due to, according to Gus Gould, who is the general manager at the Bulldogs, Josh's perception of what actually happened on the day. There was it was a bit more complicated than it usually is because the police were called away and were not able to test that positive sample as they normally would at the scene. But having said that, he's protesting his innocence. Now he has the chance to explain all this to the NRL. What he'll say, I have no idea. How the Dogs are feeling about it, I have no idea. They have stated publicly they are concerned for his welfare, of course, and will look after him. But there's a lot of talk about what they should do with his contract because we know that Gus Gould and the Bulldogs take a very dim view of drug use in this manner. So anyway, we won't speculate any further on that. We'll find out what happened. And to all those people who've texted in, a number of people, including Dave the bus driver, who puts it in context by saying, bad luck about the Bulldogs, mate, but what about Oscar Piastri winning in Formula One? Yes, outstanding performance indeed. Very happy for young Oscar. He is a great talent, and I'm sure we'll have more to say on that with Trent Nikolic on Wednesday. Maybe not with Clinton Maynard because he's doing Drive on 2GB. So I don't know whether he's going to wait around for 2 hours. Maybe he will because he's so enthusiastic. Now, look, we've got some calls coming in. I want to play you a little bit of Peter Dutton on TikTok in a minute, but we've got some calls coming in on build to rent and housing and all those things. And it's a complex situation. There are a lot of factors we need to look at, but we're going to get some ideas right now, I think at 14 to 9. Graham's on the line. G'day, Graham.
G'day, Bill. How are you?
Well, thanks, mate.
A nice night. Bit not so windy, so I'm happy.
Yeah, that's a nice change. Yes.
Yeah, look, I think I'm a builder and a small-time developer.
Yep.
So, and I think it's a great idea, but when you start thinking about, they don't understand property. Why would I speculate? They make it so hard even to do a duplex. Let's say I build a duplex and I hold it and then rent that out. That's okay. But the councils don't want duplex. And even a small villa development or whatever, or a 2 or 3 story unit block. I'd love to own one. But why am I going to spend, $5, $6, $10 million and hold that capital, and I'm relying on capital appreciation where they want to take out, I've got to pay GST because I'm not selling the units and the taxes, and they want to take out negative gearing, and I've got to pay capital gains tax if I do have capital appreciation. Like, there's got to be tax benefits in there. Otherwise, you're only going to make 3, maybe 4% on your money renting those homes out, where you could have it invested at the moment and make 5 or 6%. So why would I bother and do all the hard work and the headache?
Exactly. As low as rates are, you're absolutely right. You're better putting it in a short-term
do it for love.
Policy. Yeah, I know. And look, the other thing too that you brought up that's an important point that I didn't mention with Amanda Kopp in our earlier interview, and as I said, there are many, many facets to this, but I think one thing all parties, and I say political parties, are agreeing on is we need to get down to the council level. And state governments actually have to toe the line here because there's not a lot the feds can do about it. But they have to get down to council level and free up the housing industry. And there's other ways to free up the housing industry too, in terms of within the industry itself. You've got a labour shortage at the moment.
Absolutely. I've been in the game for, unfortunately, nearly 40 years. And the young'uns don't want to come in like they used to. Used to be a lot of young fellas wanted to come into the trades, and it was good, and I enjoyed training them, and I've trained 12 apprentices. But it's just, everything's so hard now.
Yeah.
Councils make it hard. The red tape. This new Basics law that's come in with a 7-star rating, that's throwing 20 grand on a house that didn't need to be done. We don't need double glazed.
Very gently alluded to the fact that an independent person who really knows what they're talking about is probably the person to listen to, as opposed to people who have obviously political pressures on. With the federal election coming up pretty soon. Good on you, Pam. Thank you. We've got to move on because Todd's on the line as well, as a business owner, I think. G'day, Todd.
G'day, Bill. Mate, in regards to what Judo Bank was talking about, inflation, no one seems to be able to get the inflation problem rectified because nobody seems to want to go into the nitty-gritty of it all. We have a society now which is continuously asking for pay rises, constantly. And to the point where, how are you going to get inflation down when everybody continuously wants more money, more money, more money, more money? It just doesn't work. It's impossible to do that. We've got to, our society has become so damn greedy. We need to get back to normal status and say to ourselves, okay, we've got to get to a point where we've got to start budgeting back to the old days. Like, I'm back in 1980. Now, in the 1980s, the banks were able to do a certain amount of things, but we've gone now 38 years later, well, no, more than that. Banks are now stealing our money every single day for whatever they want to do, because that's what they want to do. We've also got the government doing exactly the same thing. They're constantly finding ways and means of taking your money for their own purposes to throw away and do whatever they want with. And everybody else is having to squeeze themselves to the point where there's a breaking point. Now, business-wise, the same with businesses. We are in a position now that we're constantly being squeezed by political problems with insurances. Everything you do is a squeezing problem. And the problem is, if we don't start doing something, the next 10 years are going to be absolutely... Problems here, Bill, are going to get absolutely worse.
Do you mind me asking, Todd, how would you describe yourself? Small, medium business, large business?
I have 20 people that work for me. I have two businesses, and both businesses in the last 5 years have been squeezed to the point where if we don't start doing something and start telling the government, stop squeezing small business, we're going to be no small businesses out there. We'll be just turning around and going, well, what's the point? We'll just close the doors and go home and sit on the dole.
And I don't want you don't need to tell me what business it is, but tell me, how much time do you spend on compliance? The old-fashioned red tape.
Red tape is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I would turn around and say at least one week, one day for every week is compliance to make sure this is done, that's done. And it's got to the point where you're constantly being scrutinised. And I'm not joking, Bill. You turn around, what business and what normal person has to turn around and say, you own a business, I own two businesses, and I turn around, and if I went and spent $20 on whatever, the government wants to know, what did I spend the $20 on? And as a small business, you get sick of it. You get to the point where you say, well, enough's enough. We're getting sick and tired of being told what we can do with our own businesses. We're the ones that started the business up. We put our own capital into that business, and then we get told by the government, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. The bureaucratic crap that goes on now is spoiling this country absolutely astonishing.
Sorry, Todd, I can hear your frustration, mate. I'm just running out of time, and I think that says it all, though. And, of course, Todd's not just speaking for himself there, but he's speaking for the 20 people he employs. If Todd goes under, that's 20 jobs lost. And look, I'm not suggesting, Todd could not do better and make his business more efficient. We don't know those details, but I think he does speak generally for a lot of people who are in that position, and very passionately as well. Thank you very much for your call, mate. It's coming up to 6 to 9. I still haven't got onto the nuts and bolts of what happened yesterday between the Dogs and Manly. I did tip Manly. I know some Dogs fans will be upset with me for doing that, but I was just trying to be objective yesterday when I was asked about it, when I chatted about it with Mark Levy. But I must admit, I was hugely impressed with the way they played and very proud of the way they played, and they were outplayed by a side that just managed to... It's like in tennis, as Roger Federer said, he won 80% of his matches but only 52% of his points. In other words, you got to win the moments. And that's what Manly did yesterday, and to their credit. And they've got a team that, if they can play well, are capable of beating the Roosters. So good luck to them. And the Dogs will learn a huge amount from that. And they will be a much better side for it. But very, very proud of the way the team played yesterday. We've had a few people say, Joy, good on you, go the Cowboys, you're still in it, so well done to you. And I've loved watching your team play over the years as well. Didn't like the way you flogged us the other day, but they're still good to watch against other teams. Anyway, we'll be right back after this.
Before 12-year-old Charlotte took her own life, she confided in a friend that she was being bullied at school. Her friend's dad is Jason. She wrote to your daughter, "I'm sorry."
She did.
And your daughter wrote back, "Sorry for what?" There was no response. She then wrote, "Charlotte, you are scaring me." She then wrote, "Charlotte, answer. I want to know you're all right. Charlotte, please, I'm here for you."
Yeah, makes you wonder why no one else was there for her.
Ben Fordham live on 2GB.
Emergency Care Fast Facts with Dr. Keith Edwards, Sydney Adventist Hospital.
Burns can be serious. Cool the burn under cold running water for 20 minutes. Don't apply cream, ointments or butter.
Sydney Adventist Hospital. Emergency care. Always open.
Heading on a rip holiday? Spending money in another currency? From dollars to dong, pounds to pesos. If you're still using major banks, you could be getting ripped off. Instead, save up to 4 times compared to the major banks when you spend money overseas with Wise, the app for doing things in other currencies. See how much you could save. Download the Wise app today. Terms and conditions apply.
This is the sound of a life being saved. The risk of bowel cancer increases with age, so everybody aged 45 to 74 can do the free at-home test kit every 2 years. When found early, there's a 90% chance of successful treatment. If you already have a kit at home, put it in your bathroom, right where you can see it, because your next trip to the bathroom could save your life. Get to it. Visit bowelcancer.org.au for more information.
Little Athletics is here to help young athletes grow into the country's next champions. With a focus on encouraging kids to be the best they can be, Little Athletics is a fun, social and active program that creates an engaging and encouraging environment. It's also where some of Australia's most accomplished athletes started. Registrations open August 1 for boys and girls 3 to 17.
Find your local club today.
For more information and to register, visit lansw.com.au.
Velocity members save up to 40% off selected products at Snooze. Plus, for a limited time, earn double Velocity points. Hurry, the Velocity member event is on now. Exclusions, T's and C's apply.
What a little Snooze can do.
If you're a plumber, a sparky or a demolisher, then you'll have scrap metal to sell. For more than 20 years, top dollar metal recyclers have been paying for every kilo, every time at a fair price. Check out the prices at topdollar.com.au.
Having trouble obtaining your regular medications? Kingswood Compounding Pharmacy can formulate replacements that are as close to the original product as possible. We provide personalised medications to suit you. Find out more at kingswoodcompoundingpharmacy.com.au.
You're listening to 2GB. Give your immune system a boost this spring with Lipo Sachets available from health stores and leading pharmacies. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
Dave on the text line says, fine for the ALP to demand more houses for construction, but it took us 7 months for a basic granny flat to be approved by our council, and it was a complying development. Good luck on getting anything approved. Look, I think a lot of people have got stories like that, haven't they? Great quote on Federer, says JJ, but Agassi wouldn't agree. Yes. All the proposals from the Greens, say Nigel, will make housing more unaffordable. Policies to increase the supply, reduce red tape, decrease taxes on housing, free any rent controls, slash public sector spending to reduce inflation and permit lower interest rates. A lot of people agree with that, Nige. This one from JJ about the same JJ that talked about Federer's quote saying, what about a war, when we were talking to Warren Hogan about the future and the economy. Well, look, we all know that's possible for very good reasons. Unfortunately, it's very sad, but that is a fact at the moment. We are in a very volatile global state. When I say state, I mean condition. Now, the mortgage rates aren't the problem, says this text. It's the size of the mortgage. And that's a very good point too. We'll be right back with Stephen Fennick and TikTok.
On the app or streaming on your PC. It's clear. 2GB sounds great. Sydney's 2GB 873.
In this bulletin, security of political figures in the US under question, a couple cleared of murder, and a new cancer trial showing promising results. It's 9 o'clock. Good evening. I'm Chandra Llewellyn. US President Joe Biden says he's relieved Donald Trump is unharmed after a suspected assassination attempt and will ensure the Secret Service has every resource to protect him. A man was spotted in bushes armed with a gun and has since been taken into custody. Former head of ASIO and former Australian ambassador to the US, Dennis Richardson, admits 2 attempts on his life in 2 months is unusual.
It certainly highlights the environment in which US politicians are currently operating and the potential threats facing both Donald Trump and also Kamala Harris. I think they'll certainly review the security they have around both candidates going forward. I think it'll be heightened and it'll be more visible.
Former television host Andrew O'Keefe has been charged, accused of breaching bail conditions and possessing drugs. Police were called to an address in Vaucluse on the weekend and arrested the 52-year-old. He's been refused bail to appear in court tomorrow. A couple has been acquitted of killing a woman 2 decades ago in New South Wales. Senior reporter Josh Bryant.
22 years after Amber Haig disappeared, Robert and Anne Jeeves faced a judge-alone trial accused of her murder. The judge found she is satisfied on the evidence that the young woman last seen in June 2002 is dead. But Supreme Court Justice Julia Lonergan noted cases are not determined on rumour and speculation, as she found the Crown had not proved key factors, including regarding the alleged motive, beyond a reasonable doubt. The couple found not guilty of murder and released to sit with their legal representatives in court. At the Supreme Court, Darlinghurst, Josh Bryant, 9 News.
The coalition claims the federal government's Help to Buy scheme will do nothing to boost home ownership. Labor's trying to get the policy through Parliament but needs the support of the opposition or the Greens. The overhaul would see the Commonwealth take a financial stake in the properties of first home buyers. A prostate cancer treatment trial is showing remarkable results. Researchers from the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre have been using a liquid form of radiation in early stage patients. It's usually reserved for those in the later stages of treatment when conventional methods fail. Urologist and